What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. Today we're talking about running backs that are trending up in value, along with if I think they're a good pick at their current ADP. First up, we have Zamir White. We know that the Raiders are going to be a very run-heavy team this season. We know that they lost Josh Jacobs in free agency. Despite that, in free agency after that, they only signed Alexander Mattison and they drafted Dylan Laube, but neither one of those two are major threats to Zamir. Mattison backing him up. You've got two scat backs in Abdullah and Laube. That's not a lot of competition for Zamir White. And then you look at the available free agents, which is something we can, kind of keep in our mind for all of the players we're going to talk about in today's video. It's Joshua Kelly, Rashad Penny, Cam Akers, Matt Breida, Latavius Murray. That is not a list of very good running backs, and those are the decent ones. There are much worse running backs as well. So there's really no one left sitting there in free agency that could all of a sudden sign with a team that's really going to concern us. The only thing would be a trade, but right now we have no real intel on trades that are going to be happening. It's possible that someone gets cut, in late August. They sign with the team, but how everything is set up right now, after the draft, after free agency, the Raiders just not really investing in the running back position behind Zamir White. That leaves him in line for a ton of touches this season. All of the Raiders' goal line work, and they don't have a quarterback that's going to be stealing a ton of rushing touchdowns. So he's not going to be cheap, but I think, maybe people kind of get sticker shock with looking at him as the running back 21 right now, and they're like, whoa, I'm not taking Zamir White as running back 21. Again, not probably a ton of value there in terms of definitely going to shatter that, be a top 10 running back, but I do think the ADP makes sense. So not like a significant target, because I have him projected to see a ton of touches, and still he grades out about the running back 21, but don't think that that's some terrible ADP. He's going to be the focal point of this rushing offense, and they're going to have him, in a pretty strong role, a lot of touchdown potential, a lot of upside there. But yeah, running back 21 makes sense. Another running back seeing a pretty big spike in value after the draft is Joe Mixon. They give him a 3-year, $25.5 million deal with $13 million guaranteed. And then they only spend a 6th rounder on Jawar Jordan. So when we think about, this Texans offense, it's not an offense where we're like, ooh, this is going to be, take the Raiders. So we just talked about a second ago. The Texans are a better offense, obviously, than the Raiders. But the Raiders are a very run-centric offense. They want to establish the run, really utilize Zamir White on a ton of carries. That is not the Texans. The Texans are going to throw the ball a ton. But that's not really a bad thing for fantasy. The value we're getting with Mixon here is that he's going to be on the field a ton. He's going to be the goal line back, so when they run touchdowns in, it's going to be him. But he's also going to benefit, obviously, from teams being like, well, Mixon's kind of the last thing on our radar, right? We have to stop Stephon Diggs. We have to stop Tank Dell, Nico Collins, anyone else that Stroud just elevates because he's so good. We got to stop the passing attack. Mixon is the last of our worries. So he should be efficient for Mixon, right? He's not going to go out there and have 5 yards to carry, but he's going to have a pretty decent season in efficiency on the ground for him. But he's also going to catch passes. He's going to have rushing yards because they still are going to run the ball. He's going to have touchdowns. So it's the floor there is so locked in. And when we think about Joe Mixon, we know he's a player that is capable of ceiling because he does everything. And we think about what's being left behind. Singletary had a pretty decent year last year. Leaves behind 216 carries, 30 receptions. There's also that possibility with Dameon Pierce. We know that Dameon Pierce is not a fit for how this offense wants to run. He had 11.3 touches per game last season. Absolutely a scenario where he is traded sometime this offseason. That would free up even more touches. So, Mixon is staring at 250 plus touches this season with, again, involvement in the red zone, involvement in the passing game. He's seeing significant value upgrade in terms of when he signed there to now, just in the sense that they did not add anyone else. They are locked in featuring him. Speaking of Singletary, though, he's also trending way up. You kind of thought, okay, they signed him. Maybe they go out in free agency and get someone else. Maybe they go out in the draft. They draft another running back. And they did. And people asked a lot about Tyrone Tracy Jr., the running back that they did select. But personally, I need a lot more convincing to think that he's going to command a lot of touches. I think he's an exciting player. And I think from a football perspective, if you're a Giants fan, you're probably going to like him as a player. But I think for fantasy and in terms of like the value differential for Singletary, like how it affects him pre and post draft, I still think it's a positive them drafting Tyrone Tracy Jr. So he played 4 years at Iowa, then 2 seasons at Purdue. He was a wide receiver at Iowa, kind of like I would say a running back hybrid at Purdue. But he's an older prospect, right? Because he played 6 years in college. So he's already 24 and a half years old. He's only 2 years younger than Devin Singletary. I just sort of doubt that someone who played 6 years of college football and totaled 146 carries in those 6 years is a major threat to Devin Singletary, especially on the ground. I do think they can use him in creative ways. They can use him on end arounds, line up in the backfield and give him, 3 to 4 carries a game, a couple of targets, kind of use him as like a change of pace back. I think that's likely because when you look at the other backs, it's Eric Gray, who's been a bust, Gary Brightwell, who's not very good. So it's like, pretty easy for Tyrone Tracy Jr. to command touches. I just don't think they're the touches that take away from Singletary. I really believe that they're more schemed touches and that Singletary is going to have a very strong workload on early downs, will still be used in the receiving game, will be their goal line back. So an ADP of the running back 35, I think Singletary is an exceptional value in drafts right now. I think his ADP is going to go higher. So I said, these first we've talked about, their value is up, but I don't know if there's like significant value in the ADP for Zamir White and for Joe Mixon. I think there is for Devin Singletary. We started with a former Bengal joining the Texans. We moved to a former Texan joining the Giants. Naturally, we need to complete the full circle, talk about who is filling Mixon's role on the Bengals. In my opinion, we've got 2 here, Zack Moss and Chase Brown. I think Zack Moss is a pretty big winner. I think that, he's seen his value go way up from when he was signed to now, because there was still a chance that they brought someone else in for a 3 running back committee or someone else in to compete with Zack Moss. They could have drafted someone. And I do think Chase Brown is good and that Chase Brown will be highly involved. But the Bengals, again, not going after anyone else, to me kind of signals their confidence in Zack Moss. We know Travion Williams is there, but if it hasn't happened yet for Travion, it's probably not going to. Chris Evans is never going to be a thing. So those 2 aren't really threats at all. My expectation is that Moss is going to, be the lead back. They're going to use Chase Brown as, I would say, like a 1B. I do think they're going to have a virtual split in touches where Chase Brown is just a little bit behind and being used more as change of pace, more for his explosiveness, but not getting, 17, 18 touches a game. But that, Moss will do a little bit of everything, which is, again, what we like in fantasy. I think Moss will get more of that early down work, but will mix in the receiving game, will get goal line. And again, if you've been following the channel for a couple of years now, like, he's a player we've always liked. I've always liked Zack Moss. He's just never really been given that like strong opportunity until last season with the Colts. Was kind of a mixed bag for his production, but I think in a few games he really showed what he's capable of. And so the upside here, if he can hit and be that lead back for the Bengals, I think the upside is worth the cost at ADP. Again, I think he's like the 1A to the 1B for Chase Brown. But if you think differently, this is one where you got to go off your gut, because Moss goes earlier. Moss is the running back 29. I think Chase Brown right now is around the running back like 36. It's not a huge gap, but a gap is there. And so if you believe that Chase Brown is actually the 1A to Moss's 1B, definitely don't take Moss. Wait a little bit later, probably like a round or 2 later, and take Chase Brown. So that one's kind of up to you. But again, my take is that the ADPs are correct and that Moss is the 1A. Another running back trending up right now is Jerome Ford. The Browns basically came out and said that, Chubb is progressing well, awesome, but that obviously it was a major injury and that he would need to be cleared by doctors, obviously, to play again. Like, none of that should impact us at all. It was obviously a big injury. Good, he's progressing well, but obviously needs to be cleared by doctors. Like, none of that is new news. But after that, Stefanski made it a point to talk about Jerome Ford, talk about how well he played last season, talk about how they're excited about him moving forward, talking about, how they like their current running back room. And that's what we want to hear. We want to hear that, okay, because Chubb is probably not going to be like fully healthy in week 1. If it takes Chubb half a season to kind of get back to that like 90-95% range, we want to know, okay, is it Jerome Ford? Are they good with Ford, Foreman, and Hines as their 3 running backs? I think yes. I think right now we can definitively say they're good, giving Jerome Ford a significant workload to start the season. Now, I really like the ADP on Nick Chubb because right now, you're getting him as like your 3rd running back. And if he does return to like 90% of what he was by the end of the season, when those weeks matter the most, I think that gives you significant value. But with that being said, we need to remember that like he's going as people's 3rd running back because he tore both his ACL and his MCL, which required 2 surgeries to fix. And that's not something you come back from at 100% in year 1. We're probably looking at next year for when he's really good to go. Or maybe he's never at 100%. It's more, that 90-95% range. And maybe he only reaches 80% of what he was this season. So there's no guarantee that, especially to start the year, Nick Chubb is in that full-time role. And so if we think there's a chance that Ford's going to operate as a lead back for even a small chunk of the season, I think his ADP as a running back 42, it makes a lot of sense. And for, the amount of time that you extend beyond like a few games, if you extend into a month, 2 months of the season where he's in the role that he was to end last year, he's going to bring people a lot of value at that ADP. So I just think the confidence their coach is showing in him adds value. Final running back duo, actually, we're going to talk about today is Zeke and Dowdle. Zeke has actually gone up over half a round over the last only 4 days. Like he's just trending up in drafts right now, just after it became official that he'll be signing with Dallas. To me, though, the real winner is Dowdle. Like Zeke, he's seen his rushing yards per game drop every year of his career, right? Every single year that's getting slashed. 3.8 yards per carry 2 years ago, 3.5 yards per carry last season. He's turning 29 in July, but it's like Zeke at 29 is like another running back at 31, 32, just given his over 2,500 career touches. Like when I think of Ezekiel Elliott still having a lead back role right now, it just makes my head spin. It's like, how? Like I just don't see a world where Zeke is even remotely efficient this season. And so I just don't see it happening. And I think people are kind of thinking, oh, it's going to be, an even split a little bit. Like that's what the ADP is indicating, an even split a little bit in favor of Ezekiel Elliott. But like Dowdle looked better than Tony Pollard last season, who, by the way, is leaving behind 252 carries and 55 receptions, 307 touches. Even more opportunities last season are not there anymore. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, I'm 100% confident Dowdle's the one. He's getting those 307 touches. Of course he's not. But I'm pretty confident Zeke is cooked. And there's no way that Deuce Vaughn or Ronald Jones, if Ronald Jones is even like on the team anymore, but there's no way, even if they keep him, that they're getting any sort of real workload. And so unless Royce Freeman has a random breakout or they bring someone else in, I think that Dowdle is set up for a potential breakout, which is the 43rd running back off boards, makes him a very interesting pick. So if you watched this far, be sure to hit the like button. And if you're new here, well, it's free to subscribe to the channel, so no harm in doing that. I'll be making the exact same video as this for wide receivers on Friday, then 7 players you'll regret drafting on Saturday. Also, newsletter probably comes out Friday or Saturday, so if you want the free newsletter, there's a link to that in the description box down below also. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting the like button? How about subscribing to the channel if you're new here? Thanks for watching.